Now, in my opinion, most major religions are flawed because they don't make a lot of very simple connections. They don't get this heaven they talk about as outer space. It's the same thing. If we replace the word heaven with outer space, I think that would help people understand. And I think a lot of religions in the world, certainly in my part of the world, I won't say a lot of them, certainly in the United States, it's as though we act that all of this is imaginary. Isn't it? When we go to church, this is God we all sing to, and maybe it was just me when I was a kid, maybe other people don't look at it that way. But these are actual tangible beings, and one supreme being out there, other than us, is not what any religious book says whatsoever. There are many, many, many different beings in all the religious books that are aliens slash angels. That's the same thing, guys. Same thing. Who else would the angels be? Seriously. So I think religion would be a lot better off if they made those two very simple connections. Heaven equals outer space, aliens equal angels. Same thing, both of those. Okay, so now what if we're reading the Bible and we've replaced, let's say, heaven with outer space and angels with aliens? It's almost a science fiction story, isn't it? But it's the same thing. And that view of things is why it's inherently flawed at this point. And another big mistake that most major religions make, other than Buddhism is the only other one I know of, is to say that their way is the only way to God. That's crazy. And anybody, I think, who believes that is inherently more delusional than I am. If there's a supreme being out there, and I think there is, I'm sure there is, because the universe is by design. Our solar system clearly is, if you look at the numbers. Some great project that someone set in motion that we're all a part of. We're all riding around on. I mean, it's incomprehensibly big. But just an obvious question, if it was so important to our souls that we follow one and only one path to get to God, why in the hell is it so hard to find? Well, because it's not supposed to be easy, is what a lot of people say. Well, it's not easy for anybody, so mission succeeded there. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think there were many, many, many special people that came to this world. And Jesus Christ is one, absolutely, I think. So is Muhammad, Buddha. Any of these people that are literally worshipped as near gods, I think were obviously special to everyone around them at the time. I don't deny that. I'm sure there were countless hundreds of others that had been around that just weren't latched onto like them. And unfortunately, in the society we're in, those people are now used to manipulate the masses, which is about as sad as anything gets, to use our lack of understanding of our souls and the supernatural and the afterlife to manipulate them, to fight against one another, usually is how it works. That's pretty bad. That needs revision, I think. Now, I'm going to move on and be just as harsh to science. The problem with science, in our history in a sense, because it's almost a sort of a scientific method we have to get to say what our ancient history is it is inherently flawed because they don't take account for things that a lot of religious people do. Primarily, there are beings beyond this world that influence us. Science can't take that realistically into their equation yet because they have yet to definitively prove it in their own minds, which to me, it's pretty freaking obvious if you look back at some very obvious things. Large stone monuments they left to give us a clue and a freaking half that, hey, the humans didn't build this 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. Something else came down, and that's what all religions are based off of. Every single one's the same thing. Something came down from the sky. These are the angels, the aliens. But they don't take account for that, and it factors into everything scientific. Everything. Because it's all by design. And science tries to figure it out without taking that into account, which is a huge hole in every single scientific theory made to this date. An enormous, gaping abyss that we were created and dropped here multiple times. Look at the gaps in the evolution of mankind. What happened? It's like we were all swooped off the planet for a while. Well, we were. And then dropped back on again. This has happened over and over and over. But unfortunately, we're still so unadvanced and so primitive in so many ways that we don't know how to leave accurate records for people 5,000 years from now to see like what's happening today, which is really important. I sure hope things like I'm doing now are still around on videos and audio recordings. Things are much harder to manipulate than written word. But I think if people just sort of stepped back and thought for a second, If religion and science would work hand in hand, with mutual respect, believing in the sanity and credibility in each other, as fellow humans just trying to figure things out, boy, wouldn't we figure out what's going on pretty quick. We're real close to it, closer than we've ever been. You're going to have to throw a touch of common sense on top of that too, though. It's really important. Everything that is real makes sense. It fits logically. If something doesn't fit logically, don't do it. Don't believe it. Alright, something else a lot of people have written me about is wanting to know how to get contact. They want to know how to talk to them, which I'm glad to help with. Now, first thing everybody needs to keep in mind is there's a group of people who they are in contact with. And anybody who wants to believe, they'll show. You need to understand that there is a possibility it'll take a lot of time and patience. And are you willing to dedicate that time to it? And I think that's something important for everybody to think about before you start. That said, pretty much everybody is guilty of spending countless hours watching television. And this is more exciting than anything you'll ever see on TV. But logistically, you need to do a few things, I think, to help yourself out. Now, first off, we'll go back to telepathy for a second. Telepathy is different than thinking. There are small differences. Really, the only small difference is when you're speaking telepathically, you need to realize that you need to project that thought communication to something else, and you need to fully understand that there's a being on the other end of the line. At some point, you'll get them. And that when they talk back to you, it's just as simple as if you were sitting right here in front of me and we're talking about our day. It's just as real as that. That's really hard for a lot of us to grasp. Understandably so. So start with that point. Really project your thought just upwards into the sky. And tell them you want to see something. Now at that point, a lot of people get something really quick. And odds are pretty good if you're wanting to do this that you've had contact with them before, because why else would you want to? But another good way to do is recently there's been, if you get away from city lights is good, but I've taken video of some over the downtown Denver area and they're still visible. But they're just these ultra bright star looking things, which are not stars. I'd say there's usually, if you can get out of the city a little bit, 4 or 5 of them through the night sky. This is really wild when this happens for you, if you decide to try this. You'll be rubbing your eyes thinking, wow, that just do that. And I would say bring a second witness, if you need help to make sure they're a believer too, because the mind's ability to explain real things in a way is incredible. Just to fit in your base of reality. But find one of those stars and project your thought directly towards it. Let them know that you see them. And once you see these things, it'll stick out to you. Like, that's not anything I've really ever seen in the sky before. They've been up there for a while lately. I don't know how long. But it's ships parked in front of other stars, is what it is. And they've just matched the orbit of the star with their given elevation, so it fits perfectly. And there's another thing to get our attention. But if you ask them to move around, they will. Like I said, you need to project the telepathy very clearly towards them. Think loudly at them. Think at them. And ask them, just tell them that you want to see them move around. You want to see them do something to prove to you that it's not a star. Do something very unstar-like, okay? Now, from my personal experience, I've found that at that point, they'll start making some movements around their little part of the sky. They don't go far, but they'll start moving up and down, or left and right, or circular in direction. Or sometimes all the above. And the first time I saw this happen, it was absolutely incredible. It was one of the most amazing feelings ever. And they talked right back to me. I went out in the middle of the woods to do it. In the middle of the night. And a lot of people are too scared to do that. And I would have thought I would have been too, but I wasn't. But, it's good to get away from people, I think. To get away from that collective pull to the television. But yeah, and once they start doing it, ask them to keep doing it. Ask if they'll show you more. See if they'll, sometimes it's really cool flashing lights. Gosh, I saw one time when I first started doing this, that, boy, it turned every sort of fluorescent color you can imagine. Pink, yellow, purple. It was just green. It was gorgeous. And really, really bright. It was at 4 in the morning. It looked like it was right over the city and nobody noticed. Nobody but me, I think. But it did it right on cue when I asked it to.